let the adventure begin. I know for me, when I think of the San Joaquin, Sacramento River Delta here in, I'll call it Central California, geographically probably the central. This is what I think of right here. And I know I said in other videos that, if you can, get out and see this history before it's gone. And I'm going to give you an example of that right now. This is the site, if I'm saying it correctly, of Giusti's. Giustis. And I say site because, listen to this, y'all. Just 2 days ago, I was looking at a photo of this place on Google Maps. And I thought, this is going to be my first stop. So I thought, I'm going to stop here and grab a drink, a snack, maybe lunch, depending on what time I got here. That was my plan. And it is my first stop. But it's not here anymore. Oh my goodness, man. Wow. This is along this is the levee, of course, but this is the old road into Walnut Grove. And we're going to take this into town. Oh man, such a disappointment. I really wanted to see this place. I'll show you a photo from Google Maps of when this place was still here. All right, let me read this to you. Although this is tough read because there's a lot of condensation in here. So it was originally a bar and known as Miller's Ferry Saloon. Now, the original building was built in 1899, so I guess the Giustis, they've had it since 1912. Over 4 generations, they have served family-style meals from original family recipes. Whether you are an old friend or a first-time visitor, they take great pride in welcoming you to their home. This is heartbreaking. Reading this sign now, this is just heartbreaking. I wonder when this thing went away. It looks like it's not been here for a few years. Again, folks, get out while you can. Yeah, what a cool place. Come in here, get a meal, soda, maybe a beer. Come out onto the pier over here, where I was just at earlier, or walk on down this way. All right, well, this seems as good a place as any to do a quick intro. We're back on the Delta. I was here, probably about a year ago on my first time on I was on the San Joaquin River side. Today we're going to explore the Sacramento River side. We're going to focus on a little town of Locke, which is right up the road from where we're at. And we're going to go from Locke down to Isleton, and because there's really interesting history in both those little communities. Plus, I'm a photographer. This should be some great photography opportunities. So looking forward to that as well. If we have time, I want to go towards the narrows of, if I'm saying the name correctly, is it Carquinez or Carquinez Straits? I don't know. Probably saying that wrong. But anyway, the narrowest point on the Delta, where just a little bit west of where the San Joaquin and the Sacramento Rivers converge. And also part of the reason, as we'll get into in a little bit, part of the reason that we have a Delta in the first place. Again, I'll talk more about that in a moment. So, yeah, wow. A disappointing start, but to see this place gone. But cool little levee road we're going to go down next. So let's get started and see how this goes. All right, so I don't want to get boring here and read to you like you're in class or something, but I do want to read this to you because if you're like a geography nerd, kind of like me, this is interesting. So let me read this, and that'll kind of explain what we're going to be looking at today. Geologically, the delta has existed about 10,000 years, and since the end of the last glacial period, in its natural state, the delta was a large freshwater marsh. Now, this is where it gets kind of cool. Since the mid-19th century, and I think this was probably about 1856, something like that, most of the region has been gradually claimed for agriculture. Now, this is where it gets really, these numbers are fascinating to me. The delta consists of approximately 57 reclaimed islands and tracts, but there are nearly 200 islands in the delta that are named or not named. And listen to this number. These are all surrounded by 1,100 miles of levees that border 700 miles of waterways. So, and if you look at this thing on Google Earth or Google Maps, looking down on it, it just goes on and on and on. And what's fascinating, I think this is my fascination with it, as you drive through this area, it seems endless. There's just endless levees and roads. Okay, now let me give you some final numbers to kind of, again, put all this in context, and then we're going to get headed north here. All right, altogether, the delta covers 1,153 miles, with 841 square miles, or nearly 73%, devoted to agriculture. And that is true. You drive through here, it's just farm after farm after farm. Now, here's the final point, and this is interesting. Geologically, it is not considered a true river delta, but rather an inverted river delta. Basically, what that means is, unlike the Mississippi, where all the sediments washed out into the Gulf of Mexico, and then they have what they call like a crow's foot delta. This one here, they call it inverted because instead of the sediment going out to the ocean, because of the narrows of the Carquinez Strait, the sediment actually collected behind the narrows. So in this land right here where the two rivers come together. The only other major river delta in the world located this far inland is the Pearl River Delta in China, and we're going to talk more about the Pearl River later in the video. All right, so let's get headed on down the levee here, headed towards Walnut Grove. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to get on this here levee is because this was the original road into Walnut Grove, and from I guess we'd be coming from the south. And a lot of these roads have been bypassed, and let me give you an example of that. Like right out here, let me roll my window down. There's a new road over there, all right, which makes sense. You know, a lot more traffic these days. And not only that, these levees, as you can see, they kind of settle over time. But this is cool. This is the original. I love old roads. This is the original. Look over here. We're on another part of the channel. This stuff is so interesting. And think how things change over time. So back in the day, the mid-18th century or 1850s onward, the delta was a means of transportation for goods, products, services, things like that. Mostly transportation of agricultural products, but by steamship. But these days, it's all about recreation, man. All about recreation. Well, I shouldn't say all. Mostly about recreation. And that actually makes a nice little segue into another point we're going to talk about. I was going to mention, so now I'll mention it. I'll not have to, but look at this. These days, this is how the majority of agricultural products get moved through the delta. It used to be steamboats, then it became railroads, and then with the advent of more modern transportation, and I should say more roadways, it's now all this stuff gets moved by truck. And just wanted to do a quick little sweep through downtown Walnut Grove. And I think we'll start that little bit of the story here before we head over to the historic town of Locke. All right, so there was a Chinese settlement here in Walnut Grove. And let me grab the dates for you real quick on that. Wow, look at these old buildings. Look at this. Wow. Now, earlier I mentioned that I gave you some numbers on the Delta. Well, it was predominantly the Chinese workers or laborers who reclaimed a lot of this land here in now what is now known as the Delta region of California. And the numbers here are pretty significant. One of the numbers I read, I think it was 88,000 acres of land were reclaimed. That was once marshland, which then, with the levee system in place, they were able to turn it into agricultural land. Now that happened between about 1860 and 1880 when all that took place. At that time, there were about 100 Chinese living here, and I think Walnut Grove had a total population of a little over 800, but there were about 100 Chinese living here in Walnut Grove. Okay, so this is interesting. I'm going to read some to you again. Oh, it feels like we're in class, huh? This is interesting, though. A Chinese guy, his name was Bing. His nickname was Charlie. Now, he had made a fortune in his first 7 years here in the U.S. So while here in Walnut Grove, after making his fortune, it says he built a gambling house in 1908, followed by a second gambling house, a hardware store, a dry goods store, a barber shop, a pool hall, and a Chinese herbal medicine store. But get this, in 1915, all that burned down. Now, after the fire, a group of Chinese merchants, they approached a gentleman by the name of George Locke. Now, George Locke, which, as you would imagine, the town would become known as Locke. It was once Lockeford, but after the Chinese settled there, they basically renamed it to, or shortened the name to Locke. Now, Locke had already been renting out some land to some other Chinese merchants. Now, keep in mind, at this time in California, the Chinese could not actually own land. They could only rent or lease land. So what George Locke did is he leased land to these Chinese, $5 for a residential lot and $10 a month for a commercial lot. And he actually called it ground rent, if I remember right. There was already a small group of Chinese that were residing there in Lockeford. It was when the Walnut Grove Chinese moved to Lockeford, that's when the community was renamed to Locke. Now, when this new contingent of Elk Grove Chinese moved to Locke, they basically picked up where they left off. They built, let me think, it was a dry goods store, a saloon, a hotel, and there was another, I forget what it was, but also about 45 single-story and two-story wood frame buildings, which, as we're going to, the cool thing about that's why we're here today. Right, that was cute, an elderly Chinese lady, which triggered another thought. It's rough getting older, man. Your thoughts don't come to you until they get triggered by something. Anyway, as I was watching this elderly Chinese lady walk here, that reminded me of another piece of information. I'm going to share it now in case I forget it later. In the community of Locke, I think they're saying there may be roughly 10 that are direct descendants of the original Chinese that lived here. The rest have moved out of the area. That's another piece of history that we're going to get into here in a moment. So anyway, let's get driving. You know, everyone, I got to tell you, I like this little town, man. Oh, I could definitely live in a little town with so much history. Look at this as I just driving through town and saw this. And I wanted to show you this corrugated steel building. They said that when a lot of the Chinese thought this might be a temporary residence, so they didn't actually paint buildings. They would just cover them in corrugated steel. I wonder if that's what the history is of this. Look at this. So yeah, looks like a residential area at this point. Although there is a mocha ice cream place up there. I may have to go check that out later. And then there's this historic Walnut Grove, Chinese Historic District, Japanese Historic District. So the Japanese is to our left and the Chinese are to our right. So, you know, this whole entire area right here is actually not that big. So it's good to know we're in the historic area. This is, what a cool little find this is. On my way to Locke and I found this. One of the interesting aspects of the delta here is that, and we're seeing a little bit of an example of it here. Beyond us over here is the Mokelumne River and the Carquinez River. The Mokelumne would actually, it kind of goes off in this direction here, or basically south, and joins the San Joaquin River before going into the delta. And yet here, and by the way, there's a bunch of levees out there. There was once, if you look at that from Google Maps, it was once, in fact, maybe I'll pull an image from Google Maps and show you what I'm talking about. But there was once a island out there. Well, it looks like it was an island. And then the levee off the Mokelumne burst. And again, I'll show you that on Google Maps. And basically filled that island. It's all full of water now. Well, that water there, because what you're seeing at the end of this here is another levee. Or at least a body of water that was contained within the levees. And that flows in this direction here through these series of gates. You can see them kind of right off under the bridge there. And that joins the Sacramento River, which by the way is it's rocking and rolling right now. A lot of water going through there. Oh, look at this, old rails. We're going to get a little bit into that as well. Some of these rail systems, if I remember the dates correctly, go back as far as 1909? I thought this kind of looked like an old rail bridge when I was looking at it. And that's exactly what it was. Yeah, I remember we're looking at those huge girders where the signs were posted on it. This is an old rail bridge. Look at this. Wow. The railroad was significant in the development of Locke and Walnut Grove, because that rail line right in front of us, that's heading right towards Locke. And that bridge we just looked at, that is actually coming out of, comes from downtown Walnut Grove. We are historic Locke. We're there. All right, let's do this real quick. I'm going to take a drive down here. At least I think I am. And then we're going to walk this, but let's do a quick driving tour. Look at this, y'all. This is what first got my attention when I saw a photo of how narrow this street is. And again, this is predominantly the old original Chinese area, residential area, and basically just the what they call Chinatown. As we'll see, residences here, businesses here. We'll see if we can go through some of these, and I'll dig through my pages and notes here and see what we can come up with for information. But this is cool. All right, here's a look down Levy Street, and folks still live down here. So not a bad little neighborhood. If it weren't for the busy road behind us, this would be very, very quiet. All right, so we just had a walk down here, and let me show you some of these buildings. This is cool. Unfortunately, most of these are closed, including the museum, which is disappointing. Mentioned earlier there are a lot of single-story and two-story. These are obviously the two-story buildings, and a lot of these, from what I've read, the business would be down below, the residence upstairs. I found this on my photo walk earlier. Look at this. How about that? You want a bath? It's 5 cents. You want soap and water or soap and towel with that? That's a little extra. Look at this little tin on the wall here. You guys, look at this, you guys. This is just back in a residential area. Look at this. Oh, this is so cool. Look at this. How cool is this? I mean, I know this is not what it was like back then, but maybe it gives you some kind of a vision of what it was like back then. Look at this. I've read that these days a lot of what this area is attracted has a lot of your more people more inclined to be involved with the arts, and I gotta appreciate this though. A lot of alleyways here. I'll show you some more of them. But this one right here, probably the most interesting. I mentioned earlier the Dailoy Museum is closed, which is too bad. This I definitely wanted to see. Another alleyway here. These are everywhere. And we have the Moon Cafe over here. A lot of just souvenir shops, craft shops. Oh, look at this. I missed this one earlier. Look at this little alleyway. Later on, I'm going to take you around the front and show you what we got going on front. That's worth seeing as well. And interestingly enough, it looks like most of these buildings are still being used. Not all, but most. This building's got a serious lean going on. Look how it's leaning this way, but check this out, y'all. Let me back up. Look at this wall. Let me level my camera. Some serious leanage going on there. A theater, a Star Theater entrance at one time. Look at that strange cargo, loot and booty. Another alleyway. These are fun. Why are these so irresistible? They really are. Oh, that goes back to that residential area again. And this is something I meant to talk about earlier, and I missed it. Let me zoom in here. Check this out. Locke Historic District is the largest and most complete example of a rural Chinese American community in the United States. No comparable district exists that so clearly illustrates rural Chinese American life. How about that? Right out here in the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. And don't let me forget to share this with you. The Dailoy Gambling Hall. You remember earlier that I was mentioning a guy by the name of Bing Lee, or they called him Charlie. This is one of his gambling halls. And remember from what I was reading earlier, Bing came from Walnut Grove, and when that burned down, he in 1915 he relocated all of his businesses up here, and this is one of the first buildings he put together in 1916. A cool little statue of Confucius here. Role model for teachers through the ages. And this is the Locke Chinese School Museum. And again, this one's closed as well. And how about this? We just looked at that school up in the Grange not so long ago. And here at the end of Main Street is the Locke Boarding House. That one's closed as well. Well, I didn't pick a good day to come visit museums such, did I? All right, so we've made it back out onto our main levee road here, and as you can tell, or as you're going to tell, it's busy here. Man, there's a lot of traffic. But I wanted to show you all these old buildings on what many call Main Street. A lot going on here. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these businesses are closed, and the one that I'm most disappointed in not, well, I wanted to see the museum for sure. But also, there's a little Chinese restaurant here, Locke Garden Chinese restaurant. It's closed today. I was really hoping to maybe grab a meal there, but that's not going to happen. And there's a little bit of view of the Sacramento River. I'm not seeing any bathtub rings indicating it's been higher this season, so it's moving. All right, so this is interesting. That machine I just showed you a photo of, that old machine with the bevel gears and the knobs and all that on it, that was part of the flour mill. There was one flour mill in Locke, amongst many other buildings. All right, so in the interest of time, because we lost that hour, I'm not going to be able to do the Highway 12 part of this trip that I wanted to do today, which is unfortunate because it shows some of the old rail lines that used to go out through the Delta. However, we have one more chance to show you some of those, and at least a small portion of them, up in Pittsburgh, which we're headed that way here soon. But first, I'm going to stop here in Isleton. Isleton was once called the Paris of the Delta. I don't know why that is. I couldn't find any information on why that is. There was a big influx of Chinese and Japanese into this area about 1876, I think the date was. And the reason for that was they were obviously looking for agricultural jobs. Now, these two areas were considered districts, designated as districts, and curiously, each of those districts is now registered in the National Registry of Historic Places. Now, Isleton was established by a guy by the name of Joshua Poole. Again, that was in 1874, and he built the first wharf here in Isleton. Now, the idea was to basically capitalize on all the boat traffic that was transporting goods between Sacramento and San Francisco. And curiously enough, I was reading somewhere that in the early 1900s, the Delta King and the Delta Queen were common sights here in Isleton, or they could at least be seen navigating the Sacramento River. And so by 1900, Isleton had a population a little over 3,000 people, and had, 5 canneries and at least 2 banks, I think it was. Of course, boarding houses, gambling houses, all that stuff that's associated with life in these towns back in the day. But let's head on downtown and have a look. By the way, these days the population, they say, hovers right around 800 people. y'all. We have one more place. I do definitely want to try to get to Pittsburgh. So let's see if we can get there. All right, so our next stop here, man, we're barely going to get there with a little bit of sunlight. Looks like this one's a little bit sketchy. At least it looked like it on Google Maps. But I want to show you this. I mentioned earlier in the video that the railroads did operate here in the Delta. Now, what I found is up here, if I get to it in time, is there is a little section of Sunken Railroad that actually goes under another set of tracks, and the Sunken section of tracks were actually used for transferring the goods, the boxcars, across the Delta. They would literally roll the product out to the Delta on the rail cars, put it on a ferry, and then ferry it across. I'll show you that on Google Maps, but I want to see if I can get to these tracks. So that's where we're headed right now. All right, man, so check it out. This is where the Sunken Railroad was, right here. Yeah, check it, look at it right there. You can see it. See these rails? There's a cut right here, a deep cut, and down in there you can see the rails. Look at that. Oh, that's so awesome. Now, there's a reason they did this. This goes west towards San Francisco, this way. All right, and this here is going east, out towards the Delta. And here's why they did that. They did the cut because the cut had to go under there's more rails out this way. Let me zoom in. You can see them off in the distance out over here. So they had to lower this rail line to go under that rail line. You see there's like a homeless camp down in there now. But then this goes off in the Delta, off in this area over here. Now the reason they did that, I'm gonna get back in my car and I'm gonna tell you the rest of the story. Yeah, this is they got a camera, the police got a camera out here, so, whew, this is sketchy. These rails are more modern. I'm not sure what the story is with these. You can see it down through here. So again, those rail lines go off to the east. You can barely see where those windmills are off in the distance. The Delta's right before those. Okay, I don't mind saying, I was genuinely spooked back there. You pull over on the side of a road around here, walk out onto the railroad tracks, you get a lot of attention. But anyway, back in the car, the relative safety of the car. So here's how this works. Let me see if I can show you a little bit we can't see much from the car, but I'll show you what I can show you. So the products that come, well, back and forth between Sacramento and San Francisco. And so the Delta is off in this area over here. In fact, I'm going to drive over there. I can go a little bit closer that way. And so they would carry the rail cars down this sunken rail under that rail line right there. In fact, let me zoom in again. Hopefully you can kind of see that in the center of the screen. And you can kind of see it off in the horizon there by the power poles. Oh, in fact, look, there's that's like on cue. Amtrak's going by to show you where those rails are. So they would load the boxcars on a ferry out here, and then they would ferry it across to one of the islands. I can't remember which island it is, but again, I'll show you all this on Google Earth. I was going to put Louis up in the air and fly out there, but I think it'd just be much better on Google Earth. And they would ferry it across to an island and then take it a little bit farther to, I think there was one more ferry. Again, I'll show you this on Google Earth, but then it would from there head on to Sacramento. So I just thought this is unique. I found this entirely by accident while mapping this out on Google Earth, and I thought that's a pretty cool piece of Delta history and a really even cooler piece of rail history. And I just wish I'd have gotten here a little earlier to show you that in a little better daylight. But hopefully that showed up in the video. But that's pretty amazing that some of the rails are still there. Now look at this. This is cool. We're at the edge of Pittsburgh, and look at this. Well, y'all, this is not the view I wanted. I guess I got here after they closed the entrance gate to Carquinez Strait, and look, I'm still struggling to say it, but I was able to confirm it is called Carquinez. Just so you know, right there in right in the middle of your screen, where that pole is, right here, that is Carquinez Strait. That is the narrowest point in the Sacramento and San Joaquin River Delta. And that's kind of, from what I read, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of the choke point. And that's basically most of the sediment is backed up this way or east of us, and that's what caused our delta. And then, of course, then they came in and built the levees, and now that's the delta we have today. And the reason for my disappointment is if we could have got down to where I wanted to go, there's a cool little pier. You walk from the parking lot across the railroad tracks out on this floating pier, and it just gives you a fantastic view across the strait. Plus, there's not far off that floating pier is an old shipwreck. So, oh well, for another time. All right, so after my second attempt at doing a video here in the Delta, man, I tell you, it's tough. I feel like I didn't succeed again in getting what I wanted. There was at least 3 other spots I wanted to go to, and I really wanted to fly Louis and just to get some good views. But maybe I need to come back on a summer day when I have a lot more time, or heck, maybe rent one of these hotels out here on one of these islands and just give myself a full 2 days to explore. This place is huge, which it's a blessing and a curse, right? But it's fascinating. It's just endlessly fascinating. So anyway, I just wanted to take you guys along today. I wanted to do another journey out here, explore, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully enjoyed it. All right, y'all, we will regroup again. I'm hoping we can do the Idria video. I know I said I was going to do that next. We didn't do that because my partner that wants to go on that along on that with me, he's been really sick, so we had to postpone that. But we will do that again. I'm hoping we do that within the next couple of weeks. I want to say 2 to 3 weeks. We'll see how time plays out for us. All right, so that's going to do it. Appreciate you tagging along. We will see you in the next video.